Moving on to Player of the Year, you guys are doing something pretty unique in the News Sentinel. I've never heard of anything like this. Tell us what you're doing as opposed to what people normally do when they anoint somebody the Player of the Year.
Well, this was a particularly interesting year because there was so much talent in the area. We narrowed it down to 5 candidates for Player of the Year, and we could have had 10 candidates, to be honest with you. There were some really, really good players not on that list. But what we're going to do, and you can read about it more in Tuesday's News Sentinel, we're having an online participation by the readers of the News Sentinel and newssentinel.com, where you can go online and you can vote for one of those 5 candidates, and we will take the reader's choice into consideration as our sports staff sits around and debates this over the next week. You can vote through this coming Sunday, and then we will name the Player of the Year in the Friday, December 10th edition of the News Sentinel. But go to www.newssentinel.com. There's a hyphen between News and Sentinel, and vote for one of those 5 candidates. And the 5 candidates are Bishop Dwenger running back Ramond Wright, East Noble quarterback A.J. Dove, New Haven running back Tavon Hurst, Cherubusco superstar Kyle Mathewson, and Bishop Luers all-around athlete Kenny Mullen. One of those 5 candidates will be the Player of the Year, and we need your input to help us make that very, very difficult selection.
So let's talk a little bit about each one of those guys, because all of them are certainly deserving. We'll start with Ramond Wright. Not only a good running back, over 2,000 yards this season, but defensive back. That's what apparently he's going to be playing at Stanford. So also good in the return game. I mean, the guy kind of does everything.
He's a good football player. He's a strong football player. And that, he's small. He's probably only 5'9", but his power is just unbelievable. I remember Kyle Beauchamp talking earlier this season after they had played him. He's impossible to bring down. And he can tackle well. He can catch well. He can run well. He blocks very well because he was in a 2-back system with Jalen West. And so, he's just a good football player.
All right, and you take a look at another running back, or a guy that plays running back mostly, Tavon Hurst, #1 in the state in rushing this year, over 2,900 yards. It's hard to imagine where New Haven would be without Hurst this season.
Yeah, not to take anything away from Ramond Wright, but, Ramond Wright could have gone down, and Bishop Dwenger still would have been a pretty good football team. Tavon Hurst kind of carried the load for New Haven. It's not like they would have been winless without him. Certainly, they have a good program, and they do have a lot of depth, but he was their gas in their engine. And so Tavon Hurst was unbelievably important to the Bulldog attack this year, and he did so much in running the ball, keeping the clock going, keeping the defense off the field, which made them stronger in the long run. And, Tavon Hurst, who really came out of nowhere this year because he didn't play last year as a sophomore, really just shocked everybody. And believe me, the college coaches in the Midwest are going to be well aware of him.
And taking a look at Kyle Mathewson, here's another guy that not only played one position but played 2 positions well. Second in the state in rushing, over 2,500 yards there. Also played linebacker, was a big force in Cherubusco's 12-2 season and winning a co-conference championship. When it comes to Mathewson, he's another guy, I think, like Hurst, where you take him off that Cherubusco team, and they're going to, I don't want to say struggle to replace him, but they're definitely going to be a different football team without him.
Oh, Lee Etzler talked after the Lafayette Central Catholic loss of how valuable he was and how much he's going to miss him. They could not have even been in some of the games they were in if he's not able to hand the ball off to Kyle Mathewson and gain yards and keep that clock ticking. And Kyle Mathewson's value cannot be stated enough to the Cherubusco attack. Boy, his strength and his power in running over people. There were so many times he would be hit after 1 or 2 yards and would just keep barreling, and much like Ramond Wright did, keep powering with the legs, run through the tackles, and turn a 2-yard run into an 8-yard run or an 80-yard run. Kyle Mathewson was just incredible to watch this year.
All right, and moving on, A.J. Dove was one of the other candidates as well. Quarterback for East Noble, had a fantastic season. Not only are the numbers good, but he also made big plays at big times for the Knights.
Oh, A.J. Dove, I can't say enough about this kid. I would pay money to watch A.J. Dove play because he is so exciting. He can run, he can throw, he never gives up on a play. You think, oh, he's going to be sacked. No, he's not. He's scrambling, and he just kept that East Noble offense going all season long. And it seemed like every single game the Knights were in this year came down to the final minute, and could A.J. Dove make a play or couldn't he? And more often than not, he made those plays, and that's why they had such a spectacular season. The yardage he gained this year, I mean, he was in Sports Illustrated and Faces in the Crowd. That's how great he was this year. But if you had a high school fantasy league, you wanted to draft A.J. Dove #1 because his yardage and running and passing were just incredible. And he took care of the ball. He didn't turn the ball over. He didn't fumble a lot, didn't throw a lot of interceptions. He just gave the Knights a chance to win every single week.
And you want to take, going from a guy whose stats were crazy to a guy whose stats are good but don't necessarily pop off the screen, Kenny Mullen. And that's not to say anything about Kenny. It's just when you're up 42-0 at halftime, you want to make sure that your senior star isn't going to get knocked around in the third quarter. So he didn't have a chance to maybe get the stats that everybody did.
That and Bishop Luers had like 7 other guys that they could use other than Kenny Mullen who were just almost as effective. But Kenny Mullen isn't a fantasy football player like A.J. Dove was. He's just a good football player. I mean, tell me the area he couldn't contribute. He contributes defensively. He contributes offensively. We saw him return a punt for a touchdown that was called back due to a penalty in the state championship game, so his special teams were unbelievable. He's going to IU at this moment, but we'll see how that whole coaching situation resolves itself. But now Kenny Mullen has speed, he has strength, he's a good football player. And I tell you, guys like he and Ramond Wright, A.J. Dove, most of these kids are better people off the field than they are on the field, and Kenny Mullen is one of those guys. Always gracious, always well-spoken. I love Kenny Mullen. He's a great kid.
I know you're reserving your opinion for the newspaper here in a couple of weeks. I got to go with Ramond Wright. I just think too good on both sides of the football, and as you saw, Cathedral had a little trouble getting him. He had some big gains in that game. I like the kid. I think he's going to be great, and I think Jim Harbaugh's getting a steal at Stanford.
Well, everybody's going to have trouble with Ramond Wright as far as getting him, be at Cathedral or be at Oregon State next year. Ramond Wright's just a fabulous football player. Now, whether he plays for Jim Harbaugh or not, I don't know, because Jim Harbaugh may not be in Stanford next year, but we'll see about that. But yeah, Ramond Wright, you can't go wrong in picking him as your player of the year. But we'll see what the readers have to say. We'll see what our sports staff has to say, and really there's no way to go wrong in this selection.
All right, and Coach of the Year, there's really no way to go wrong in that one as well.
No.
Taking a look at some great performances from the coaches this year, who do you like the most as far as 2010 goes?
Well, you know, there are so many coaches that did outstanding jobs this year. I mean, Matt Lindsay wins his 8th state championship. How do you knock that? I mean, he's second all-time in IHSA history in championships. Chris Schwarzkopf had his team unbeaten into the state championship game, so he did a magnificent job. South Adams' Jason Arnold started off 0-5, won 6 straight games. Lee Etzler, we talked about, Cherubusco had a special season, went to the semi-state. All those guys were just magnificent this year, did a great job. But the 2 guys that really stand out to me were Leo's Jared Souter. He loses his absolute best player in the sectional opener in Connor Kasser, yet somehow regroups that team, keeps them focused, and gets them to knock off the #1 team in the state at their place, and then the defending state champion in Leo in West Lafayette. And the job he did in holding that program together through great adversity was just phenomenal what he got done. Having said that, he's not my coach of the year, though. That has to go to Columbia City's Randy Hudgens. What this guy has done in Columbia City is nothing short of a miracle. He was 4-8 in his first year, and they won 10 games this year, which is the most in forever at Columbia City. They won a share of the conference title. He has totally turned that program around, and he's done it very quickly. And kudos to Coach Hudgens. He has just been magnificent for that program.
What do you think really flipped the switch for Columbia City? Because, as you mentioned, you know, in the NHC they hadn't had that much success. Their second NHC title, they shared it this year. Their first NHC title in 20 years, so since 1990. What's really flipped the switch and allowed Columbia City to get back in it, other than the fact that obviously, you know, they have some talent both offensively and defensively, and Logan Rare had a great season as a senior quarterback.
Right. I think what Coach Hudgens was smart enough to do was see what the the weapons he had, and he had a quarterback in Logan Rare that could operate that high-speed offense that he wanted to implement. And give Coach Hudgens some credit. He's an experienced guy. He's a young guy. He looks like he's 17, but he's an experienced guy. He played at a big high school in Bloomington. He played at Hanover. He coached at Pike High School. This is a guy that's been around some successful programs and knows how to implement offensive strategy, and you saw that in the big numbers they put up this year. And what he did was he took Logan Rare and he put him in positions to succeed. He asked him to make throws that he could, and that just turned that whole program around. And all you needed to do with the athletes that they had was give them some confidence, let them win a game here or there, and then that confidence just bred on itself, and the next thing you know, they were rolling.
Yeah, they certainly were. And speaking of Rowland, Jim Rowland was one of my coaches that I thought was a possibility. 9-4 season. I thought Casey Kolkman did a nice job at Bluffton, although the record, I'm sure, wouldn't be what Coach Kolkman would have liked, but the progress you had to like. They lost a couple games by just a couple of points, so it could have gone either way in a few games. And
Kurt Tippmann did a great job at Snyder.
Also true.
Got off to the first loss to Lures, and their team was a bit shell-shocked, and they regrouped, and they just ran roughshod the rest of the season up until the Dwenger, and they nearly knocked off Dwenger. So, there were so many coaches we could go with and mention that did a fantastic job this year.
Luke Amstutz up at Angola had himself quite a season with Alex Bauer, who could have been one of those other 10 guys that's in the Player of the Year talk. But for this season, we put a wrap on it. Tom Davis of the News Sentinel, and I'm Glenn Marini, and I guess we'll see you again next season when we're talking high school football on Inside the Zone.